I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is the Stoneopolis mod pack. Ah, yes, the fresh smell of Stoneopolis in the morning. I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Today, I've got some, well, rather interesting things to talk about. And so, since last episode, I made a couple of revelations. I didn't actually realize this, but the Quartz here, as soon as you get access to Quartz, that's when things really start going a little bit crazy. Because what we can do is we can use this Quartz to craft Quartz sieves. And I know that JEI doesn't make this quite clear or easy to understand, but you can actually use these Quartz sieves for all of the prior recipes, because this is now setting at a level 4 mesh, which means that we can apparently use it for all of these, right? I can put it in here. I can use it in this strainer for these recipes, and I can also use it in all of the recipes. As of right now, there is nothing that we have uncovered that uses higher than a tier 4 mesh. So we can actually use it in all of these, and they use 640 durability. That is a lot. That is way more than these, and they last quite a bit longer, and we can just produce this resource almost indefinitely. And so why is this important? Well, automation, because what I've managed to do is I've managed to set up a couple of resource generators 2s here, because gold is going to be something that we need a lot of. And so what these are doing, with redstone on top, what they are doing is they are just producing stone. That stone is then getting sieved with an improved upgrade, and then that is producing netherrack. And then that netherrack then gets pulled with a routing node, which I have, by the way, connected to the main node. So this is just another example that you can link these. They only can go up to 16 blocks, but I have it linked to the same routing node that I'm using to automate my charcoal. We're just using different filters on these particular things. But I'm just basically taking the items, having it go through the machine, and then I'm just pulling it out, sending it into this processor, which then takes this mesh right here and turns it into gold. So yes, I have quite a bit of gold now just because this has been running. So now with the revelations out of the way, which is pretty darn cool, we can start to dive into why we actually need those things kind of automated, so that way we can get into some new tasks. And also something I might want to mention is we're probably going to be using more of that blood magic automation today to just automate for things like copper and also tin. Now the reason being is because we're going to need a lot of those resources. We're going to need a lot of copper, we're going to need a lot of tin, because we're going to have to make a lot of bronze, because getting into the next chapters, getting into the industrial foregoing mod, it's going to cost a lot of these gearboxes. And these gearboxes cost 4 bronze per gear, so that equals to 16 bronze basically for each one of these gearboxes, and they are used quite a bit just to, for example, to make simple tasks right here, like the simple frame. It is going to need those. Now, something I will note about bronze, just a little quick tip, is you can actually craft it in your inventory instead of putting it through the pesky alloy kiln. And this is going to be the way that we probably will automate it in the future. Instead of using the alloy kiln, because there's not a way to technically automate the alloy kiln from immersive. So if we just make it here, it's the same cost minus the coal that it costs inside the alloy kiln, and then we can just toss it into our smelter, which I technically need to move closer because it is all the way over here next to our beautiful friends. Now, after diving a bit more into these recipes, I'm really starting to understand what we're really going to need in the future. So we are going to need probably a separate press for each of these operations. So this is, for one, is going to cost a lot of treated wood, which right now we don't really have a good way of automating it just yet, but we can all craft it by hand. And I think the best way to get treated wood, by the way, is by going to, for example, your coke oven and just putting logs in here. So logs are going to produce charcoal, and it's going to do this quite quickly, and it's also going to produce creosote oil in the process. So just any log into here and then creosote oil. Something else that I definitely need to do in that particular process, because we need a lot of this, by the way, is I probably want to finally make a fluid drawer. Now, while on the topic of that, just to sort of finish up what I was talking about here, we're going to need multiple of these machines that you see behind me eventually, definitely whenever we start to get into the automation processes of things. Now, like I was saying, as far as setups goes, we're probably going to need more of these mechanical presses down the line. Definitely one for each individual process, so that way we can eventually set automation for it, because it does look like we're getting very close to applied energistics, which opens up a whole new world of possibilities. So let's go ahead and get ourselves our first fluid drawer set up. So this is super simple to craft, because all you need is just wood surrounded by a bucket, and we have ourselves a fluid drawer. And then now that we have this, we can make ourselves a puller upgrade. And this is a very powerful logistical part of the functional storage mod that might go underlooked. So now I also decided to go ahead and just semi-automate this process entirely. And so to do that, I have myself a framed double drawer. Now I don't know if this is going to 100% work with the double frame drawer, but I'm going to use this in combination with our fluid drawer that's going to be over here. And what I'm hopefully going to be able to do is have this automatically push logs that I can have in, for example, this top slot. So I should be able to have logs here. Now I'm going to have charcoal to filter this out. So I'm going to grab a little bit of our charcoal out of here. And I'm also going to need to be able to lock this drawer. So I'm going to need a controller tool. Now, this is where things get a little bit powerful with the functional storage drawer, because what we can do is we can use a puller and pusher upgrade, which just uses a regular hopper, which is fairly cheap at this point. And I can go ahead and lock this drawer, and this is now a filter. So we've essentially created a filtered hopper in this regard. And so now I should be able to push and send a push upgrade. And then I need to just basically know what direction this is that we are facing. And we can right click this to change the direction. And of course, one of the best ways to know what direction you're facing in is by using your mini map, which I do have turned off right now, or just hitting F3 and seeing the facing side. And right now we're facing north, which is about the middle section of the thing on the left. This little part right here. So I'm facing north, and so all I have to do is make sure this is set to north, and then also the puller upgrade is set to north in this case. And if that means it's north, then that means for our puller upgrade that is going to be for our fluids, well, we need to make sure this is the opposite, and the opposite of north is going to be south. So in here, I can go ahead and put the puller upgrade, and notice the creosote oil has now filled in here. And we can actually go ahead and put a lock on this as well, just to make sure that locked fluid is there. And you can use this to filter fluids as well, which is fantastic. So let's go ahead and put these in. And now this is where I'm a little bit, I'm curious. Is this going to be able to even function? Because I don't know if we're going to need individuals, because I know you can hopper items into this, and this might actually need to be on the top as well. It's going to take a little bit of trial and error. So unfortunately, the setup with the double drawer didn't actually function the way I was hoping it would. However, it might actually work from the top, but I did go ahead and try out this method, and it does seem like it now wants to work. So I have a regular drawer that also has that upgrade that's pushing the logs down in here, and then this is now collecting the charcoal product. I'm not really needing this for the charcoal per se. I'm just mostly wanting it for the creosote. Now, something to note about how you actually pull the creosote out of here. You might be thinking, I just need to right click, because that's how most mods work. But that's not how functional drawers work. So to be able to get the fluid out of here, if you're wanting to pull it out with a bucket, you actually have to punch. And so punching is how you actually get the fluids out of that container. Hey, don't ask me why Buzz did it that way. That's just how it works. I mean, my understanding for why he did it that way is just simply how all of the other drawers work. You punch to get items out. Still, we're so used to how every other tank works. Now, believe me, that automation that I just shown is really going to come into play later on. And so you may not appreciate it as much right now, but it is going to be super helpful whenever we actually have the ability to craft with fluids within applied energistics. Just a little forward thinking. And so now it's just a matter of, well, making sure we have enough buckets, and then we can do a little tab trick where we can go ahead and craft here, do our first craft, and then we just hit tab, and it's going to auto refill that bucket. And we can just keep repeating this over and over again. Oh, and it is quite amazing. We just have to restack our buckets. Go ahead and apply, and then just hit tab. This makes crafting this significantly faster. But be careful, don't do what I just did and, well, accidentally overcraft and craft the wrong thing. I'm sure I'll use that fluid tank later. Now, I guess instead of using regular buckets, there's these buckets right here. This holds 6 buckets of fluid, And I'm assuming that it's going to draw from the bucket for the craft. So this is another easy way, I think, of doing this. So one right click gets 6 buckets, and then we can use this to do the craft. And that will do all 6. And so if I rinse and repeat this, that is significantly more crafts happening all in one go. Oh, that is so much better. Now, I feel like before fully jumping into this next chapter right here and jumping into the latex section, which we're going to be doing here in a second, there's a couple other things that definitely need to be worked out. And that is, for example, pulling items out of my controller here. For example, pulling out the orange and the light gray leaves and sending that over to be processed over here. And I can actually visualize this. You can see that all of this is just connected through these different nodes here. This allows you, the routing nodes allow you to extend basically your range. And so I just have everything just routed all through one central node. And that's pretty cool because we can use this all throughout our base and it's practically invisible, which is another nice thing. But those items are being carried through this basic line here and are routed all the way into our sifting area. So that allows this to constantly now be processing up void nuggets and also void tin nuggets. Now, this is all well and good, but we are still sort of missing a couple of aspects of the actual automation. We're going to need to take these nuggets that we see here and we need to auto-craft them in some way to turn them into tin nuggets. I think I found a solution, and it is a crafter that is built into Autocrafting mod. So we have the Autocrafting utilities, and this thing right here was very cheap to make, just some crafting tables and a humper. But the way that it works is very, very interesting. So I'm going to need 2, at least for these 2 particular materials right here. And this is going to be an introduction into using these from what I am seeing. So what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to send, for example, tin nuggets from this drawer or from this chest into here to be crafted. So what you do is you take your first set and you set the filter and make sure this is toggled on. And then when it receives items from the top via hopper or what have you, it should allow you to output the product into the bottom. So what this means is we should be able to, for example, use some nodes. And this is where things might get a little bit complicated because we're like dealing with multiple different inputs and outputs. But essentially, if all of our products go into this chest down here, what we can do is we can use an import node just on this chest down here alone. So I can place the importer here. And then we can use that importer then to have multiple outputs that are pulling from it. So with that being said, we'll have an output that goes up here and an output that goes up here. And then we just need to define things with our filters, basically saying, hey, only send the tin nuggets here and only send the copper nuggets over here. And then essentially we'll do the opposite for the ones down below. So we'll have an import down on the bottom and down on this one too. And then that just needs to send into this chest right here, which will then turn them into their respective dusts. And so for that, we'll just have ourselves an output. And so I'll just attach that next to the chest. And even though it does look like it's not connected to anything, it actually is. It can detect that the chest is right here. And then we just need to make more filters and get all of our filters assigning the correct items to the correct location. Now, this might be a little bit messy and janky, and setting up all of the filters can be quite a pain, but I will say that having this set up is going to save me so much time. And now to reiterate how this function works, essentially for our starting setup, we're going to have this particular node is going to have both of these on it. So we're going to have both of these items inside of its filter. And so I can just add those like so. And then on the next 2, we're going to have to be very specific. This one is going to house the tin nuggets, and then this one is going to house the copper nuggets. And so this node right here should be able to receive this particular filter. And also, I probably want to grab a few of these so I can define the crafting recipe that it's going to be doing here, like so. And then on this top node right here, this is the tin nugget one. And so when I put those in, it should hopefully start sending out those tin nuggets. Once we have it connected, they're not connected just yet. We have to link them together with the node, but I can go ahead and get this one set up as well. And that's going to do the copper. Okay, so let's go ahead and link these together for right now. So this node right here is connected, and all we have to do is just simply connect them together. We could connect them all to one another. I'm just going to try and connect everything to this one node right here. And that's just going to link everything into this main network. Just a sprawling laser line network, and I think it's beautiful looking, but of course everything's hidden when you're not holding the item router node, or item routing wand. That's what I'm going to call it. But there you go. You can see that this is now crafting, and I just got to do basically that same step, but I've got to do it in reverse to send these items out. And now with that complete, we can see the items are going in here, and these should now be processing all of the dust automatically and should end up in this chest. Now, something else I definitely need to work on is making the upgraded version of this, which just takes some of that gold that we now have, and this is going to give us a 40% extra chance of receiving a double output. Now, the reason we needed all this automation was because we needed to, well, gather up a bit more of the copper and tin, and instead of doing it all manually, I can now have it automatically processing. But we're going to need a ton of bronze. So that was one of the major goals. I think that, well, the quest doesn't necessarily tell you, but it does feel like it is a necessity at this point, because my goodness, these gearboxes are going to get expensive for bronze. So now, without further ado, I think it's time to officially start our industrial foregoing journey. So now with all of that out of the way, and also all of our individual parts made, we can now start to craft a gearbox. And so for this, I'm going to go ahead and drop an entire stack of these bronze ingots into here, and you can see the process of it building up before it puts 4 on this one belt, and we now have all the things we're going to need to make this. And so, as if we weren't getting industrial enough, we're about to embark on a new industrial journey, because industrial foregoing, in my opinion, is an incredibly powerful mod, like insta-killing the Wither kind of powerful. So I guess without further ado, it's time to step back into our crafting table and make our first couple of gearboxes. There we go. So I just made 2 for right now as I work on getting more materials, but it also gives us a free one, which is very nice. And that's going to allow us to make a pity machine frame. Oh boy, and this does cost some steel plates in order to make, and then we also have some logs that we're going to need for this. So now after making some steel plates, we can now make 3 of these pitiful machine frames. And this is leading us into the fluid extractor and also the latex processing unit. And funny thing to note, in the newer versions of Minecraft, the latex processing unit does no longer require water and latex in order to craft this machine, basically making the starting process of this mod significantly faster in my opinion. And another thing to note about industrial foregoing that also changed is you no longer will receive these tiny dry rubber for your craft. Instead, you're going to just immediately get the dry rubber straight out of the processor. But another thing to note, it takes exactly the same amount of time. So it's not like it's saving you any time in that regard. It just saves you an extra step of crafting. So now with our fluid extractor and latex processing unit now crafted up, we can go ahead and start figuring out a way to set this up. And I think that's where our extra fluid drawer is going to come into play. And this is the one that I accidentally crafted earlier in the episode. And so if I go ahead and I start to work this out, I think I can figure out a pretty clever solution to this problem. So let's go ahead and place this down. So this is where everything is going to ultimately be routed to, including our power, but we need to send fluid to it. So I was thinking, if we place this drawer here, this can actually pull from this fluid drawer, and then we can send the fluid directly into this drawer from our fluid extractors if we place our fluid extractors in a very particular way. So what I want to do is I want to have the log that this is going to be extracting from right here. And so if I have both of these connected to this drawer and pointed in this particular way, just like so, and all things align, we can actually tell these extractors to send the latex directly into this drawer. And we can also power these to make it a bit faster. So now I was also thinking, how are we going to automate the placement of the log to keep this running so we don't have to constantly come back over here and place logs down? And for that, there is a placer that is built into the industrial foregoing mod, but there's actually another thing from the Autocrafting mod that allows us to place blocks as well. And not only place blocks, but we also can place fluids, it looks like, into the world, and we can also, I believe, break blocks. There's actually a ton of utilities that are built into this Autocrafting utilities mod. And now this thing is very, very cheap. It's just 2 iron, just like so, and that gives us a block placer. Now, I don't know if this has a direction. Can this be placed in any direction? Oh, it can. Oh, nice. So we should be able to just put the block placer down just like that, and turn it on and place in our magenta logs, because that's what the quest tells us we need to work towards. And that's what we gathered last episode, was those magenta logs. So how do I want to do this? I think on this particular setup, what I might actually do is I want to set it in a way where this is facing down. That way I can access this block, because if I put it down here, I wouldn't be able to, well, easily access it, I don't think. And then all I need to do is grab a stack of these logs to put inside there, and this should last quite a while. And with those inside, I can turn it on, and there it goes. It places them down. And this should start to gather latex. It is very slow without it being powered, however, so that is definitely something to note. But we already have a little bit of latex, and you can see the progression bar sort of going down for each operation. Now, to be able to automate the latex processing unit, we not only need power and we also need latex, but what we're also going to need is we're going to need water. So I do want to be able to get water in here, and so I'm going to use a couple of fluid pipes. Now notice this is able to pipe fluids around from this side, but if you utilize the hammer, you can actually disable this side from being connected to this machine, which is kind of nifty and definitely not something that you might think is possible. So let's go ahead and hook up our water. So our infinite water is just going to come from a flopper, and I love that it can just directly connect to these. And then we now have our steel bucket, and I can just place down 2 water here, and that should start to infinitely fill this up with water, which is perfect. Now, on to configuring these machines. Another cool part about industrial foregoing is that all of these machines have configurable sides. So for example, this has the ability to send and push and pull. So I'm able to push these fluids out into this particular tank. And then on this side, since we did place this machine like so, and same for this one, this we can face from this direction, and I'll go ahead and select the right side, or the north, you can see on the direction, and we'll tell that to push. And then now both of these should be sending the latex into this container. But this machine can also pull in latex. So what we're able to do is we're able to say, hey, how about we pull from the left side? And we can notice all of that latex that went into this drawer is now going into here. And the same goes for the items that are going to be output. For example, I'm going to put a crate right here, and then I should be able to say, hey, how about we send these items by pushing them to the left. And then of course it's time for the fun part, and that is getting the power routed over here. So I'm just going to hook up this. I think I'm going to go ahead and put this on the top actually. So just like that. And what I need to do is connect this down and get it all connected to these connectors. So long as nothing kind of overlaps, everything should connect pretty good. Oh, that's perfect. And there we go. Now everything has power, and these should start running a bit faster. And so now we wait. Yes, because we have to kind of wait for this to process. The only way to sort of increase the output of the plastic that's generated from this is, well, to just make more fluid extractors. Because, I mean, the processing unit is pretty fast on its own, but until we get upgrades down the road, this is going to be the pace at which it goes. But we already have our first and, well, second dry rubber, and then this just needs to be smelted. But here in a moment, we should have the ability to make an upgraded furnace with this resourceful furnace from the looks of it. And after a quick smelt, we should get an extra bonus of 2 more, which is perfect because that is how many we're actually going to need in order to make that resourceful furnace. So now with the resourceful furnace, we can kind of situate our stuff a little bit better, I think. So for example, over here, since we have this currently routed into this barrel with the 12 going here, why don't we instead basically set this up so that way, and of course I'm going to have to extend the room a little bit, but basically we can say, why don't we have a barrel on top and a barrel on the side, and then we can set our inputs and outputs right here by having it pull from the top. We can also have it pull from over here as well, just to sort of make sure that we are providing our, well, actually this is being set to output. We'll need to make sure our input is set over here to pull as well. So that way, when we're not actively using it, it can also be currently smelting up our dry rubber. And so after making another one of these, I can set the output to be pushed over here. But we still need to get power to this. So what I might end up doing for power is placing a node down here. But what I'm curious about is, can we get a power port back here into the back without disturbing that water? I don't know if it will do that. Let's try. Let's go ahead and put this here, and you're gonna be learning with me. So if I was to break this and I place a cable down here, will it? Oh, it will displace the water. Oh, that is beautiful. I was wondering if it would be able to do this. Of course, it doesn't make sense logically, but not all things in modded have to, of course, make sense. That's the beauty of it. But there we go. So now we have another line connected in. This is all powered up, and we are ready to go. And now, of course, to show this off, you can see that it's doing 3 items at a time. And it does appear to be going even faster than a standard furnace, so there's no complaint coming from me here. Now, even though we have nearly finished this chapter's progression line, I feel like the ultimate goal of this line is to lead you into the infinity generator. And this is a generator that relies on multi-blocks, judging by the book that this pack gives you to kind of look over what you can build with it. I think it's leading us into this, so that way we can get into applied energistics, which is definitely going to need a significant amount of power. Now, aside from that, it also wants us to craft some conveyor belts, and believe it or not, these conveyor belts are very interesting. Because one, they can transfer items, and they do need to be, they need to receive an upgrade in order to, for example, pull and push items in. But they can also send fluids, which is kind of interesting. These are technically fluid pipes, like they can transfer both items and fluids in that regard. Very, very interesting, and we might actually use these down the road. And then it also wants us to make a sword, a vitality sword, which is a very, very powerful sword, by the way, because once you get this thing fully upgraded with heart canisters, because you can shift right click to store heart canisters in it, it will increase its overall damage, and which is kind of insane. But for a starter sword right now, this thing basically has 0 durability. So we can go ahead and, for example, summon in some skeletons, and I can show you, we should be able to, for example, right click on here, spawn some of these mobs, and you'll notice that it takes 0 durability. So yes, we now have an infinite sword, which is fantastic, since we're going to probably need that in the future. But now for the final item that it wants us to craft in this chapter, and that is going to be the infinity generator. Hopefully I said that correctly, which is just some redstone, some of this plastic, and then in the center, a thermal shard. But the generator itself is not the thing that's sort of expensive, because if we take a look at the BBL Infinity book, we can actually dive a little bit deeper into how this works. So this mod relies on multi-blocks, so a structure to be built around this thing in order for it to do certain operations, and I'm assuming consume certain items. For example, a lava generator basically requires lava to be placed around it in order for it to receive lava and also operate and give power. A gold generator requires a ton of gold blocks wrapped around it, and I'm assuming to be fed gold in order to operate and receive power. There's also a steam generator, which seems pretty cool. You have some campfires underneath, some glass, some water, and it looks like some blocks. And yeah, it says steam generator uses heat to turn water into steam and to make RF. So yeah, requires a turbine inside the affinity generator. So there's a lot of different like multi-block structures apparently that you can build. Like these are pretty darn cool. These are like coal generators. There's the furnace generator. And there's the infernal generator, which is just surrounded. It looks like something out of the nether. And then just the plain infinity generator. Now, whenever we hit U over this item, we can start to see a little bit more detailed information about this. For example, there is the Stoneopolis generator. There's the steam generator here. I'm assuming, I guess if you place the item in, it may show what you're going to be building. But you can definitely see the ones that it recommends in the book. But as far as like whatever the Stoneopolis generator is, we don't know yet. Maybe it will actually show us inside of a book whenever we get to that point. But like there's the steam. This is the turbine. It's just wood. So this seems pretty straightforward in order to do. But it does say uses per item. So okay, so this does still consume those wooden turbines and such. So judging from the looks of it, for example, we can automate coal quite easily. So a furnace generator wouldn't be too bad. And it looks like it generates about 50 power per tick, or in this case, it's saying RF per tick. Like I said, every mod calls it something different. So just, I think at this point, we might as well just call it power per tick. And then we look at like the steam and it generates 40. But this one does consume this item, for example. But you know, to be able to make the turbines would be kind of trivial and would actually give some use to a lot of the sticks that we have generated. So let's go ahead and test this bad boy out. So what I want to do is let's try the furnace generator, and we should be able to show this just by placing this down. And it looks like it can take any wall. Now it shows it's waterlogged in the book, but I don't think it has to be waterlogged per se. But yeah, we just need to place in the furnaces. I'm assuming they can be in or out. Probably doesn't matter. There we go. And last but not least, that in the middle. and then the multi-block is complete. But there is another item that we can actually craft, supposedly, that is supposed to show us if the structure is fully completed or not. That is going to require sticks, and it is going to require a glass pane. And so when we put these items together, we get ourselves a generator structure detector. Infinity generator structure detector. Okay, and then that is going to lead us to the latex chapter, now complete. But let's go ahead and see. If I click this, I'm guessing, how do we actually use this? Oh, okay, it says found pattern furnace generator. So by clicking that, it is now found and should be good. And it does look like, yeah, it doesn't need to be waterlogged or anything. So don't let that fool you. And let's go ahead and take some of this charcoal. And if I place this in here, how does this actually work? Okay, so it consumes it. Ooh, it makes a noise. Sounds like a beacon. That's very interesting. And this right here, charcoal is producing 40,000 FE at 50. Okay, so that's interesting. So at 50 RF per tick, that is quite scalable. If this is all it really requires to set this up, this is insanely scalable. Just to put that into perspective, like one of these only produces 16 per tick. So this whole like couple of rows right here basically produce what this thing is producing. Now, one thing, because of how noisy this thing is, well, we might actually want to mute it. So this little button up here, if you search beacon, which is what it sounds like, we can actually mute it or make it very, very quiet. I think kind of adjusting the volume here might be a good idea. But there we go. So now we have ourselves another type of generator. Now, this is important because this is the point where we need to start really figuring out how our base is going to be set up, especially since our next chapter is leading us into massive storage. That's right, here we come, applied energistics. But that, my friends, is going to have to wait for another day because we are all out of time in today's episode. But if you did enjoy, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give this video a huge thumbs up, as I would really appreciate it. And now it's time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks is going to go out to... Thank you so much for your amazing support, by the way, over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting me in one of the best ways possible. So guys, be sure to check out the Discord link down in the description below if you want access to, for example, servers like this or world downloads. Now, I know there may not be world downloads for this particular series, but all of my prior series and future series will be available over on the Discord. So definitely check that out. And of course, guys, I will see you in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye!